Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, mayor of Houndstown, USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. My co-host, the lovely Jackie Bondanza, and we're being joined by our two-legged dog ambassador, Rosie, who's been patient enough to sit through. Actually has no choice. She's only got 2 legs. So she doesn't. She has a wheelchair. She gets around, but she's enjoying this. Today we're going to talk about frequently asked questions about dog behavior. We go all over the place. Sometimes we're talking about the business, trends in pet care. It's all about dogs, the Dish on Dogs. Sometimes we want to, our customers are asking behavioral questions, and we want to work on them a little, or talk about them a little bit. One thing that I think is something that you should understand, or we should talk about, is we apply a science to this. We don't just make this up. And one of the most frustrating things in all the behavioral work I do is people are given conflicting information about things.
Yeah.
Why is a dog doing this? What should I do about it? And if you go online, it could be simple as what do I do when my dog jumps? You'll get 3 or 4 different answers. Most of them are counterproductive, that actually encourage the behavior from occurring.
Or it makes it, it makes it worse.
Right. Makes it worse. Yeah. And so what I like to talk about, so who am I? Why should you listen to me? I'll tell you why. For the last 40 years of my life, I've been studying and been involved in animal behavior, specifically dog behavior. So again, it's not like I'm just making this up. We've taken care of over 2.5 million dogs. I work with dogs continually. So again, I give points and information that work, but more importantly, that it works. There's an animal reasoning behind it, a mammal reasoning behind it. And a lot of times humans, as we talk about all the time, have a very difficult time understanding animal behavior. But I will always tell everyone, whether I'm a testifying court, whatever I'm saying, it's never the dog. It's always the human that's misunderstanding something or creating a behavior. But like Jackie said, or actually making the matter worse by listening to your next door neighbor who tells you how to stop your dog from jumping on you. So what are our, Jackie Bondanza, what are our frequently asked questions?
Okay, so we've got from Kristen Marie from our Port Jefferson location, actually. Mm-hmm. So she wrote in and she says, my dog's a 9-month-old lab. He's awesome, knows all his commands, walks well on the leash, but then out of nowhere, he'll start jumping up and biting, tugging at people's clothes. Like he's having a crazy moment. Then he goes back to listening. We're being told it's playful, getting his energy out, because 90% of the time he responds to talk commands. What are your thoughts?
Right. Well, here's my thought. So we think about dogs in general. So a 9-month-old dog is an adolescent dog. It's not a puppy, and it's not a fully mature dog.
Kind of like a teenager.
Yeah. So when they're 9, 10, 12 months. So when we try to diagnose behavior or understand it, we're always constantly applying human terms. And what would a child be doing? You're burning off energy. The answer to the question is, and very frankly, with all due respect, when people say that they know all the commands, I would ask this question of your dog. If he knows all his commands, just tell him to sit, and then he wouldn't jump and bite. So when and I hear, people will always describe their dog as they know all their commands. They're great,
except for or but,
right?
And it's obviously the but that is the problem
that kills us, right? So in other words, if the biggest call I get is when people come to the door, or when the dog sees something outside that triggers this what looks like spontaneous behavior. They can be perfectly fine,
right?
And dogs, we know, are triggered by sound and movement, regardless if it's the doorbell or it's your clothing moving in the wind, and the dog jumps up to want to bite it. So my point is, when people lead the conversation by saying their dog knows all its commands, then I would say to the person who's having a problem with the doorbell ringing, if he knows all his commands, just tell him to sit and stay. and he won't run to the door. But the truth of the matter is they know their commands usually in the kitchen by the cookie jar on their terms, not on your terms.
Yes.
Is that
definitely
right?
Yep.
So now we're out for a walk and we're moving along and things are good 90% of the time until the dog sees a rabbit, a cat, or some movement. It could be anything. Any movement is going to trigger a dog's behavior. That's it. So the movement can be as simple as your pants, the leg of your pants. That is a movement that the dog, by nature, a 9-month-old adolescent dog, wants it, puts its mouth on. It's no different than a tug toy. So if the dog is tugging on a toy at home,
right.
What is your pants?
When he doesn't know the difference,
right.
you know. So we have to teach our dogs what is appropriate behavior
Yes.
and what is not. And like you said, everything comes down to not what the dog is doing, but what are you as the owner doing in reaction to the dog's behavior?
Exactly.
Are you yelling no? Are you holding him back? Are you encouraging it by, kind of instigating in some way that you might not intend to? Right. So the key for us comes down to proper reaction to the dog's behavior. What is a proper reaction?
Well, what I like to do is expose the dog to the trigger. We talk about setting them up. You don't wait till something happens. You don't wait until the doorbell rings and the whole house is running to the door and drama is unfolding. So with this little 9-month-old dog, teach him what's appropriate to put his mouth on and when it's appropriate to drop it. And again, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. And humans just have that tendency of adding too much to things. So just remember, what I like to talk about is dogs have only one mechanism. They don't have thumbs, they have teeth. They have canine teeth, and they use the canine teeth for almost everything, to play, to eat, and to defend themselves. So as a dog is developing, yes, it's quite natural that they're perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden their adolescent instinct says, hey, I see something that I want to put my mouth on. And most importantly, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning this. So let's say your dog wants to attack the vacuum cleaner or run away from the vacuum cleaner. Whatever the trigger or stimulation is, we then tend to avoid it, right? We start to avoid it and say, I'm not going to wear this clothes anymore, or I'm not going to do this. So what I suggest is expose the dog to whatever it is, because honestly, they're all very similar. They're not as complicated as most people think.
It's just a movement.
It's a movement that represents something they can put their mouth on. And frankly, if they bite your pants leg and you start yelling and pulling, now you become a toy. Right. You are now the human version of their tug toy, because this drama unfolds. Right. Screaming, yelling, sit, stay. And again, to me, obviously it's serious for the pet owner, but it's so simple. People start sending me videos now, and I watch the videos, and usually what I will tell people, and these are smart people, they're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to navigate through all of the advice they're getting from the whole world. It is simple, and you just have to keep it simple. Dogs drop.
And consistent.
So we talk about leadership, consistency, and boundaries.
Right. So in this case, what I would say, obviously tell me if you agree, is that when this begins to happen, that it's important that you have a mechanism to control the dog to prevent him from doing that behavior. So in what that looks like in our terms, when you do private behavior lessons, is we keep a leash on a dog in the house. So if this is happening in the house, when the dog goes up to somebody and you can see he's starting to get into that mode, you just take the leash and prevent him from doing it. Right. But there's a very distinct difference between holding the dog back as he's kind of going to be playfully engaged with someone and giving up a correction so he knows not to engage.
Right. So Jackie, one thing I want to make clear, and this is what's complicated when we talk about dog training, dog behavior, dog management. Again, in what you exactly said, it's not what a dog does, because dogs are dogs. It's like children. A 3-year-old child is going to do what a 3-year-old child does. It's really the behavior modification, so to speak, is the reaction the human has.
Right.
And this is what is so complicated, misunderstood. And again, this is the toxic world of dog behavior. I really describe it at that, because there's so many opinions, so many ideas, and frankly, a lot of it come from people that really never have a lot of experience in implementing a lot of these things.
Right.
So let's clear up a couple of things. There's these words, aversive dog training. Aversive means heavy-handed punishment. What we do is the opposite of that. We positively reinforce the dog through praise. Sometimes food, more often than not, is physical praise, because that we mimic, again, people, you don't have to listen to me. Watch Mother Nature and watch a pack of dogs. So dogs have teeth, and they get distracted by odor, movement, and sound. So when we talk about correcting a dog, this is a word, correction. A correction is a disruption of a dog's thought process. That's it. So if a dog is doing or beginning to focus on something inappropriate, for example, we're talking about clothing, and it looks like the dog is going to spontaneous combust, we're going to correct the dog prior to that. And I want to just demonstrate, for those of you who talk about negative reinforcement or aversive dog behavior modification, we don't use pinch collars, we don't use chain collars, we don't use electric collars, we don't use anything. What we do, because our canine teeth, as you can see, which we have had at one time, they're not as long anymore. And when I used to nip at dogs with my mouth, I got in a lot of trouble. So we needed to, because does that look crazy? That sounds, that was a joke.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone caught that.
You get it?
Okay, let's
go.
So
Mom, the dog's leadership uses their mouth. The dog leadership, they have nothing else. They don't have opposing thumbs. They can't have the puppy read a book on good behavior. So they have to mimic it with they control behavior.
Physical.
It's physical. Thank you, Jackie. So the only way you could talk to your dog forever, you can offer him a treat in the kitchen by the cookie jar, but there's not going to be a correlation between the kitchen and the cookie jar and the doorbell ringing. And in fact, I would argue, which I have, that by giving food reward over and over to reward good behavior, you actually become a vending machine and not a leader.
Right. And also, because I know I've experienced this with my own dog, when it's something of higher value than the treat comes along, a rabbit, a ball, whatever that means to the dog, that treat is out the window because you become you and the treat become devalued.
Right. Well, that's a great way of using it, and now they use this now as a high value. They use that word, high value treat.
But to a dog, nothing can be a prey animal. Nothing can be more high value than a rabbit running by or a squirrel. To some dogs,
or a ball. No, to some dogs, most dogs, but particularly a 9-month-old dog.
Right.
A 5-year-old dog, and that's
especially if he's had 100 treats throughout the day already, and there's no motivation for him to deflect to you instead of continuing on and engaging in the trigger.
Right.
Essentially.
Or he can get the treat later. He's not really motivated by hunger. He's motivated by the pursuit.
Right.
So this 9-month-old dog is motivated to capture what he sees as a prey item, which could be clothing, it could be the vacuum cleaner, it could be anything. But let's get back to this, what we talk about a correction. And so again, just think of it this way. A correction is a disruption of a thought. So if I'm the dog, so here, this is a $3 piece of rope. This is used by veterinary office. This is not what do the people talk about, crushing tracheas?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
So
that doesn't happen.
Here's the correction. Watch. And I have beautiful, as you can see, my skin is soft. I use a lot of product. And I keep my so here it is. I don't have a big fur. It's a little furry, but not like a dog who has leather, right? Leather
very
skin.
Thick skin. Yeah.
And they use, let's demonstrate. They use their canine teeth to rip into things. That's their mouth. They can't use their arms. They can't even flail their arms out. They just have this. So anyway, we take this, and I'm the doggy. Now, if this was in a natural pack, the other dog takes care of the misbehavior. They disrupt the thought process. So if I'm over, here's my head, I'm coming over here, I go like that, and then I'm turned away. This is it. And if you do it anything differently, I can't tell you how to do it. It's like using your stove at home or your blender. If you put your hand in your blender, you're doing something wrong. So I'm very careful about this because I don't want people to misinterpret this. And this includes all the behaviorists out there. So a dog goes like this, I go like that, and then I love the dog. The positive reinforcement is the physical love. Watch how I physically love Jackie. See?
Thanks so much.
What's better than giving her a wonton noodle?
Wonton noodle? Yeah, I am not motivated by wonton noodles.
I do get to the point of frustration, by people that talk about things and they don't know what they're talking about.
I agree. We see it all the time, and it's actually detrimental to the dog, because we will get the customer, that has a 9-month-old dog that is not being playful and that has jumped and bit someone.
Right.
And that's a very serious situation that's going to put the dog's life at risk.
Right.
So for a lot of people, what Mike does, this method, Mother Nature's method, is actually a life-saving technique.
Thank you.
For many dogs.
Right. And again, I didn't design it. I just watched packs of animals. I watched them use their teeth to control the other pack members. But they got to remember, your dog there's no such thing as an alpha dog in your family. You are the alpha. And it doesn't come by screaming, yelling, throwing cans of pennies at dogs, squirting them with water. It comes from leadership that they understand. They can't process language. So I can have a conversation with Rosie about being a good dog. It's irrelevant. But I think the takeaway needs to be, leash aggression. So this is part of the question. A dog being on a leash is very unnatural. So if you think a dog's not evolving, this dog, Rosie, is closer to a wolf than she is a human, right? We can see that. You don't have to be a zoologist, a biologist, or an evolutionary to know, not revolutionary, evolutionary, to know that this is a wolf who's been domesticated. Nothing has changed. So when we need to mimic that. So if leash aggression is an unnatural act, you see alligators being walked down the street on a leash, polar bears. Once we tether something to us, there becomes anxiety because the dog, see, if you notice, Rosie is sick of listening to me, so she moved her head away from me. So if I always have a dog if we're doing this and holding a dog back, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say, I bark, ruff, 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 and now the owner starts to pull the dog away. That simple act becomes what I describe as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So now the dog knows that if it barks, there's tension placed on the dog. So these are simple things.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to describe here, but I think what Kristen was, from what I understand, what Kristen wrote, she's not talking about this happening on a leash.
Right.
But she's talking maybe just about in her home. But even better to use something like a kennel lead. Right. In the home and let it just drag. And then when your dog goes to jump on somebody, bark at the door, you just give a small correction. And all that does is let the dog know in a way that the dog understands, in dog language, hey, this is not an okay behavior. Right. And then they'll stop engaging in it. Right. Your dog's just not connecting the dots.
Yes.
That what he's doing is not acceptable because you're not communicating to him in dog language.
Right. You're teaching in human language that it's complicated and frustrating to the dog. So just again, imagine your mouth is moving, and the dog has to interpret what these sounds coming out of your mouth. They don't have the ability to look in a dictionary and know what sit, be good, stay, roll over. They have to try to figure you out, and all of the things that most people do are completely confusing to a dog. So when you keep it simple.
Right. So we speak to dogs in dog language, and this mimics the way that this dog and every dog would learn naturally, which is by a nip from his mother or another pack member, and that would teach them boundaries that they need to know. Right. So that is our philosophy, and that is the way that we have truly seen behaviors like you're describing, get better.
Right. It's not heavy-handed by any stretch of the imagination. It's not old school, whatever people talk about. This is as current and relevant today than it ever has been. Positive reinforcement is the only way to do it. But the reinforcement is with I get to dogs, like really, really obviously, and that's the reinforcement. She knows she's doing the right thing. Leadership, consistency, and boundaries. What else?
And I like to think of it as kind of, like a child. For instance, if you're rewarding a child for something, right? It's an emptier reward if you give them something materialistic. If you say, okay, you got a 90 on your test, I'll take you to McDonald's. Whereas if you reward that child and say, I'm so proud of you, you did a really great job, and here's why, that's more valuable to the child and will arguably motivate that child in a better way.
But that's a perfect example. Let's just use money. If you give a kid $5 because he got an A on his test, that's great until he doesn't need the $5.
Right.
So and that same thing happens with food reward. The treat is great if he's there and wants it, but he knows he's going to get it later anyway because you're probably feeding him 3 meals a day on some kind of gourmet buffet service. Anyway, what else you got, Jackie? I feel as I'm being...
Yeah, so let's wrap it up because we really focused the whole episode on this. But it's an important topic. And for everybody else that has submitted questions, we'll get to them. But every single question is going to relate back to a tool like this and the reaction on your part to your dog's behavior. So it's all going to be the same thing.
Leadership, consistency, and boundaries. Boundaries mean if you don't want the dog on the couch on Sunday, don't let him on the couch Monday through Friday. If you start this behavior when a dog is 6, 7, 8 months, 9 months old, if he's never barked out the window in the first year of its life, or it's never bolted out the front door, it's never going to for the rest of its life.
Right, exactly. Also, go to our YouTube channel. There are a lot of really helpful videos on every type of behavior: leash aggression, crate training, toy aggression, dating back years, and it's good visual. So check us out on YouTube, Houndstown USA. All right, so let's wrap this up. You can catch us every Monday night at 8 o'clock on the Dish on Dogs podcast on Facebook. You can also catch us on the Dish on Dogs on YouTube, as well as iTunes, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. We'll see everybody next week at 8 Monday.